This is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and that is our topic this morning on For the Record. Good morning, I'm Neil Heinen. It is not unreasonable to say any community should be measured by the well-being and safety of its children. An appalling number of communities in this country do not measure up. Madison is not perfect, but it has resources and smart, caring people. It also has Safe Harbor. Safe Harbor is a place, and that's very important, for children who have been victims of or witnesses to a crime. We're going to meet a young woman and her mom who have used Safe Harbor, but we begin with Safe Harbor Executive Director Javon Al-Yasseri, forensic interviewer Jennifer Ginsburg, and family advocate Joanne Kessler. And thank you all very much for joining me this morning. Javon, welcome. First of all, you haven't been in the job all that long.
Yeah.
What, 5 months you said?
That's right, yeah.
Talk about Safe Harbor, what it is for viewers who just don't know about Safe Harbor.
Sure. Safe Harbor is a very safe, supportive, child-friendly place where children that have been victims of abuse or have witnessed violence can come and they can talk to a very specially trained forensic interviewer about the experiences that they've had. And what we do is we actually provide a very safe place for them so that we can digitally record their statement, hopefully so that the child doesn't ultimately end up having to testify in court. And we work collaboratively with a multidisciplinary team of people. This includes representatives from law enforcement, from child protection services, from the district attorney's office, and other interested parties that are working on a case so that we all come together in the best interest of the child, hopefully limiting the number of times that the child has to tell their story, and just working collaboratively together.
Do kids stay there?
Do kids stay at Safe Harbor?
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Okay,
they
it's a place that they go,
Yeah.
and then it's not a residential place.
No, it's not. It's just an opportunity for them to come and talk about what's happened, and no, it's not residential.
And am I right? This is still kind of a big deal. A lot of communities don't have facilities like this.
Yes, there's limited child advocacy centers in the state, and if I recall correctly, I think we're one of about
14, I think. Or so.
14. And really we serve beyond Dane County. We provide courtesy interviews for other counties as well. Just to think of a few: Grant County, Jefferson County,
Juneau County.
I didn't realize that other jurisdictions will come here and use the facility.
Yeah. Right. Well, in more rural communities, it's harder to have access to the equipment that's necessary to record these interviews, and so we're available to provide that support service for them.
I don't even like asking this question, but how often is it used? Is it constantly being used?
Well, last year we did about 200 interviews, and we were actually just talking about it on the way over, that we feel as though there's an increase in the number of interviews that we've been doing over about the past month.
Just the past few months.
Yeah, and just alone in the last week. Last week we had 14 interviews, and that's as many as we sometimes see in a month. So we see that there's an increase kind of coming through.
So do we instantly assume that reflects an increase in abuse?
It begs the question if that's what's going on. Yeah.
Neil, prior to child advocacy centers, instead of having this safe place for children to come and talk, the alternative would be to have a child go to a police precinct. Prior to a child advocacy center, a child would report abuse and they would be brought to the police station
and
is that
where you would do your work, Jennifer?
That's where I would do my work. And so
did you do it there?
No.
Okay. Okay.
But that's where my role comes in.
Yes.
But a child is brought to the police station to talk about abuse. Children blame themselves and they worry that they're in trouble. Children think that they're the ones that are going to go to jail. So think about the impact of a child who's brave enough to talk about what's going on for them, but then they're interviewed at a police station. You're not going to get the best quality information, and it's going to add to the trauma of the child for the child. So our place is designed to get the information that investigators need, but to do it in a way that supports the child, that minimizes trauma to the child, that helps hook the child up to services that they need, and then hopefully only do it once, where they can have one interview where all the parties involved get the information they need, and then they can move on to treatment and safety.
So are there other people in the room with you, Jennifer, or are you the only interviewer?
So I'm the only interviewer, so it's the child and me alone in the room, but the team, as Javon mentioned, the multidisciplinary team, so it's usually law enforcement, child protection services, then the DA's office, they are watching the interview over sort of closed circuit television. So it's cameras being, projected on a screen, so they can watch and listen. And then the interviewer, which is usually me, wears an earpiece where they can talk to me with a question or something if they want me to ask something or want me to explore a certain area. And then that conversation is simultaneously recorded. And so then the law enforcement can walk out with those DVDs in their hand.
So you know exactly what I'm going through is what you're saying.
Right, totally. Yeah.
So what does a family advocate do, Julia?
Well, I think I discovered very early on at Safe Harbor that child abuse impacts whole families. It's not just the child. And often it's at least as devastating for the parents and the caregivers as it is for the child. My job is to support families who come to Safe Harbor, both while they're there and then in an ongoing process afterward. Make sure that they're linked with the proper mental health services if they need them. We have a special program that provides assessments for kids and their parents. And my job is to make sure that families understand what's going on, that they have somebody to talk to if they're feeling down, basically to provide support.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and maybe talk about some practical advice and ways that people can support Safe Harbor right after this. We're back with three representatives from Safe Harbor of Madison, a place for children who have witnessed a crime or been a victim of a crime, a safe place. Javan Al-Yasseri is the executive director, and Jennifer Ginsburg is the forensic interviewer, and Joanne Kessler is the family advocate. And we're going to meet a young woman and her mom who have used the services at Safe Harbor. But, I mean, how do you tell people what to look for in terms of using the services of Safe Harbor, referring somebody, thinking, this might be a place I should go to?
Sure, yeah. If anybody suspects that child abuse is going on with a child, what we always encourage is to have them contact law enforcement or contact Child Protective Services. And it's law enforcement and Child Protective Services that ultimately contact Safe Harbor and make a referral.
Okay, that's
to
important.
Us. Yep, yeah.
And this seems like an obvious question, I guess, but do you recognize the signs of child abuse, or is it something we need to do a little better job looking for?
Well, it is definitely something we need to do a better job looking for, and I think a better job of acting upon. I think a lot of people who interact with children, whether in their neighborhoods or in their families, or even professionally, where you have a suspicion or concern that something's going on. Adults are often afraid to act on those suspicions. We don't want to get involved. We feel like, well, what if we're wrong? And we think about all those things. But abusers are really counting on us to look the other way. As long as we're looking the other way, people who want to abuse children can continue to do so because the rest of us feel like we don't want to get involved. So the children need us to be brave, to be courageous, and to do what we need to do to help them. Joanne?
I think it's important for viewers to know that a report to Child Protective Services, the reporter remains anonymous. And that's actually in the state statutes that the reporter must remain anonymous. So nobody's going to know who made this report, and they abide by that very strictly.
And I'd like to add that I actually recently just came across a statistic noting that 1 in 4 adults who have admitted that they have wondered or suspected that a child that they know of has actually been a victim of abuse didn't know how to make the report. And so one of the messages that we really try to convey a lot is, again, reaching out to Child Protective Services or law enforcement, just telling them what it is that you suspect. Of law enforcement,
right.
And that's the job of Child Protective Services to do. But just simply making the report begins the documentation process so that they can do their jobs in seeing what's really going on with the child.
I don't want to take this for granted, and I will admit that Jill Summers, who works here at Channel 3, has been on the board of Safe Harbor for many years and is a really good supporter. But how is Safe Harbor operated? How are you funded?
Yeah. We're funded through state grants. We do have some federal grants. Most of our funding, though, is through private donations, and we are so grateful to the generous support that people have given us. But this has been a challenging year for Safe Harbor, and we really would appreciate as much support as possible.
I think a lot of people just take for granted that it is, either a United Way funded agency or that money's not an issue.
Right.
And I know from talking to people here that that is an issue. And so people can contact the website.
That's exactly right.
And contribute.
Visit our website at www.safeharborhelpskids.org. There's a whole list of in-kind kind of opportunities as far as volunteer or donations of things like snacks for kids when they come, or just to make a monetary donation. We've got that set up on our website, and we appreciate the support.
We have on the screen right now is how to report a child abuse case and where to call. I'm just thinking, Joanne, that in particular where family members might have a difficult time reporting something like that, it would just emphasize the importance of someone in the wider circle of family or in the community to step up.
And I think that the majority of cases that we see involve a family member or a very close family friend as the suspect person, and it does put families in very, very difficult positions. Lots of families would like to feel that they can handle this on their own and deal with it within their family. We know that doesn't work, and our goal is to sustain families and to try and build strengths with families so that they can be together, if that's possible.
There's a cost to the whole community, isn't there, Javon?
There really is. And societally, there's economic costs that come directly from child abuse. I'd come across a figure not that long ago noting that children that had to be removed from the home as a result of child abuse, the average cost for access to mental health services and then medical services to help support that child was on average $30,000 per child. I mean, the costs are exorbitantly high as a result of child abuse, and this is something that's preventable. Child abuse is a choice that abusers make and choose to make. It's preventable.
Well, Javon and Jennifer, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Joanne's going to stay with us, and we're going to be joined by Sheila and Alex when we come back right after this. Joanne and I are back, and we are joined by Alex Karna and her mother, Sheila Johnson, for this segment. Just tell us about the experience. How did it happen? How did you get to Safe Harbor?
Well, I guess Alex's father and I separated when she was a baby, so she spent half of her time with him.
Yep.
Over the years, there were some issues that came up. She did go to counseling periodically, but it's really hard for a small child who is going back and forth between homes, that transition.
Yep.
And so my thought, and the counselors that she saw over the years just believed that that is why she was having some difficulties, and it wasn't anything consistent, it was just periodically. Then when she was 13, and this is something that I will never forget, we were sitting in the car traveling to her friend's house, and she said, "Mom, there's something I have to tell you," and it sounded really serious. So, I'm thinking, okay, 13 years old, what could this be? So many things happen when you're 13. And she said, "My dad touched me."
And at that point, Alex, did you know you needed to get away from that situation?
I knew that I had already kind of tried to get away from my dad, but I was at a point in my life where we weren't seeing each other that much, so I started to feel safe enough where I thought, wow, I really need to tell someone about this, otherwise I don't know how I'm going to go on with life.
And were you afraid even to tell your mom?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was afraid to tell anyone. I was told that no one would believe me. It was perfectly normal, or that I would get hurt, my mom would get hurt. So, I mean, it's my dad. Of course I'm going to believe whatever he says.
Yeah.
What's really remarkable and a testament to their relationship is that most kids do not tell a parent. They tell somebody else, they tell a little friend, they tell a teacher. It's very rare for a parent to get that information first, and it says a lot about the two of you that you felt safe telling her.
I've always been incredibly close with her. So
But it must have been scary for you too. What do you do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just it. There's only one thing that those words can mean, and then now what? You know, we have this big situation that has to be dealt with, and where do you go and what do you do with that information?
So what did you do? Did you call the police?
I called, Alex was seeing somebody at that time, and so I
Called
did call her first.
Yep.
We went in and met with her. She said that a report needed to be made, and I actually did that. She offered, but I knew that they were going to need to speak with me anyway, so I just took care of the phone call to children in the Department of
Children and Family Services. Yeah, yeah.
The next day, they had a social worker and a detective at our home who interviewed Alex more extensively by herself. It was-
At your house?
yes,
Correct.
they came to our house.
And that was Wednesday, and Friday we had an interview at Safe Harbor. And without Safe Harbor, I really don't know what we would have done, because there really was a feeling of powerlessness at that point, and guilt and powerlessness.
Did you even think through, Alex, that maybe you'd have to go down to the police department and talk to cops down there?
I thought that for the longest time, which was another reason I did not want to say anything. I mean, you see Law and Order and all those shows, and when the survivor of the abuse is in the room, they're being interrogated, they make it look like we're the bad people, like, why didn't you tell sooner, all this stuff. So I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do this, no one's going to believe me. But at Safe Harbor, it is definitely not that way. Like, the atmosphere, it's very child friendly. When you come in, people greet you in a warm way. They don't look at you like something's wrong with you. They're just, I mean, I don't know what I would have done, Joanne. I mean,
you were there.
I was there.
Yep.
Yep, and I kept in contact with Sheila for quite a long time afterward, actually.
Yes,
we still are in
exactly.
contact occasionally.
they always make sure that wherever you are in your life, they make sure that you are okay. It's like a lifelong commitment that they have to everyone that they help.
Neither of you knew about Safe Harbor at the time, though, right?
I had
Until
no,
you,
we
we had no
actually
clue.
didn't know.
How long ago was it, Alex?
6 years
6
ago?
years ago? You're 19
June of
now?
2006.
Yeah.
Etched in your mind.
Exactly.
I mean, this is, it's hard to, but what kind of advice? I mean, what would you say to someone who was in your position, Alex?
Would say to tell. No matter what your abuser tells you or what you think in the back of your mind, you need to tell, because your life can only get better after you tell about your abuse. And you may feel vulnerable for a while, and there'll be difficult parts, but your life can only get better. And people do believe you, and people do care. They will be there for you.
So Sheila, I mean, the advice from you would be for parents. What would you tell parents in this position?
Well, the first thing I would say is believe your child.
Uh-huh.
You know, kids do not tend to make these things up. And people who believe that there are lots of false reports, I can tell you the whole process is grueling enough that no one would choose to go through that. There's no reason that anyone would. And get help for yourself. Safe Harbor was fabulous. You know, we went there that Friday afternoon, and the next week, they were helping us to set up counseling, both for Alex and for myself, and it was specific counseling that is geared towards treating children who have been through trauma.
Sure.
So it wasn't, just call up some therapist on the phone and and schedule an appointment.
Are there things that could have made it go better for you? Are there things that...
The only thing I think that for me would be the court process, how long it took, because sometimes they would say, we're going to start to get ready for court this week, and then it wouldn't happen. And they would do that again, and it wouldn't happen. So I built up like almost, I'm going to get ready to do this, and then it wouldn't happen. So
that's one change in the system that would you
Yes.
think would be beneficial.
Yes.
Any others you can think of that?
I mean,
I would say the media. I think that the media needs to be a little more sensitive about the information that they give out. They say that they want to protect victims, but Alex's dad didn't go to trial. He committed suicide the week before the trial. And
it was everywhere.
It was,
Yeah.
huh?
It was in the
Okay.
news, it was in the paper, it was, I
Mm-hmm.
had people from school coming up to me.
yeah, everybody knew.
Everyone knew. And the information that they basically only just didn't use my name. Everyone knew that it was me.
Yep. Yep. We've just got a little bit of time left. Joanne, this seems like a pretty courageous mom and daughter here.
Yes.
But do you see this at Safe Harbor?
It's pretty unusual for a mom and a daughter to be willing to put themselves out there like this, and we never really asked, they offered. We really are very, very invested in protecting families' privacy as much as we can. But this is a special pair of people, and we are forever grateful to them for being willing to talk about something that nobody wants to talk about.
Well, it's very obvious you're special, and I respect your coming out a lot. Thank you very much for doing this. This is very helpful. We're going to wrap up For the Record right after this. My thanks to everyone from Safe Harbor for being here today. Next week, we'll talk to former Madison Police Chief David Cooper, author of the book Arrested Development. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you next Sunday.